Am I enlightened? So the most basic answer to that is, who would be enlightened? So if I were to claim that I was enlightened, who would that be? Who is this Lisa that is enlightened? Like, who do you take that to be? A thought, a feeling, a behavior of the body? So let's say that you said it's the body that's enlightened. Then the other teachings wouldn't make sense, because it says you are not the body. It's one of the most fundamental teachings of non-duality, that you're not the body, and that there is no separate person in relationship to the world. So if the body is enlightened, then that means there is separation. So who would be enlightened? A thought, a feeling, an emotion? Or do you imagine that the person that you imagine yourself to be becomes enlightened? But that's the illusion, that you imagine yourself to be someone who is enlightened. So that's the most obvious answer, is who is it that you think becomes enlightened or is not enlightened? Who? Isi? Are you enlightened? Who are you, Isi? Who are you? Who? Who are you? Are you an angel? Are you? You Mama's angel? Ducky, 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 duck. Ducky, ducky, duck. Ducky, 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 duck. You're an angel. Are you a full angel? She just said, "Oh, walk, walk," and she had her din din. Walk, walk, and din din. Did you do din din? Did you chick chick? Yeah. So that's the most fundamental question, is who is it that you imagine becomes enlightened? If you imagine someone as thoughts and feelings in the body, as something, then you imagine that something becomes enlightened. And there's many people out there that claim to be enlightened. But who becomes enlightened? The shift is realizing that you are not a thing, and that everything is appearing in you, and that you aren't a thing, and that by default makes you everything. Because if you're not a thing, then you're everywhere, you're all things. Separation only happens when there's a belief that you are a thing. So who becomes enlightened? Who is it that you believe yourself to be? Isn't that something? Isn't that beautiful? So then we go to the next level of the human, and no, my human is not enlightened. So the human, what do I think the human is? I think the human is a biological machine that has particular conditions, social conditions, and psychological conditions, and genetic conditions, and all of them are at play creating a character. But that character isn't a solid, separate entity. But my character, so if I talk about this body, and if you have an image of enlightened as, say, being serenely peaceful with no emotional reactions, so say if that's what we take it to be, that you're like a walking Buddha that's always like, then I'm not. This character isn't. It can get jealous, it can get angry, it can get moody, it can get stressed, it can get pissed off, it can get stingy, what other negative emotions are there? And that's a never-ending process. And on the human level, this body-mind strives to improve itself because it sees that it's better to be kinder, it's better to be less angry in terms of society. But on the ultimate level, it doesn't really know what's better or not better. How would you judge that? And so there's not really any guilt about behavior, or there's guilt relatively, like if I run over the neighbor's cat or if I scream at someone, but at the same time, it's seen that we just don't know what good and bad is, and it's a happening, and there isn't an independent entity inside these bodies doing these things. But intellectually and cognitively, it understands that positive emotions, so to aspire to positive emotions is much healthier for society and for yourself than to aspire to negative emotions, like always being grumpy or moody or angry. So that can be seen. But at the same time, it's recognized that life has a will of its own, and Lisa can be a surprise in all situations. So my character, this character certainly isn't enlightened. So some people claim that their character is enlightened, that they don't get angry, that they are only in peace. And I don't know about that. That's not been the evolution of my character. What I believe, but it's only a belief, and at the end of the day you don't know, is that that's not possible. And if I believe that, then that means that more than likely in the reality that won't appear. So if you're going to have something appear, then you have to first of all believe in it. So believe that it's possible for a human to like continuously always be at peace. But I don't believe that, and I never have the inkling to try and change that belief, ever. I have the inkling to aspire to be a nicer, more balanced human, but I just don't have the inkling to, it just doesn't come up, the thoughts to believe in that. I just don't believe in it. And if people told me that, there's a part of me that's open-minded, and if someone says that's their experience, then my tendency is to believe them and give them the benefit of the doubt. But also there's another part of me that just doesn't believe it. So I just don't think that people are lying, so I would give them the benefit of doubt and maybe suspect that maybe they wasn't conscious of some things, but then also I would be open to the idea that maybe it's true, maybe there is that possibility, but I fundamentally just don't believe it. The reason that I don't believe it is because I feel like it's not human nature to be peaceful. You know, that goes against all these spiritual concepts. I feel like we have all our emotions, and that they're meant to be there. You're meant to be afraid of the big bad wolf, or you're meant to feel guilty if you kill the neighbor's cat, if you run it over, or if you smash into someone's car. You're meant to have these feelings. I do believe that they can be reduced by a number of things, is conditioning yourself more into non-duality, seeing that there is no doer and that there is nobody here. So conditioning the body-mind mechanism into that, I feel like it's more in line with life. Understanding your unconscious mind and your shadow side, and understanding and completely accepting that humans also have a predator side, and that they're an animal, and that they're striving to survive, and really owning that. And I feel like that can only be owned when you really see that you're not the doer. Like, it's impossible to see your shadow side if you really believe that you're the doer. I feel this can be really balancing for the person doing this. And then also I feel like when there is this energetic shift back to consciousness, that this can create a distance between the emotions and the experiences. It's like an energetic distance, like it doesn't feel so serious, so therefore it relaxes a lot of the dynamics and helps them pass through quicker. And when I talk about the shadow stuff and getting to know yourself, I mean getting to know your body, getting to know your chakras. Like you can't really know your shadow side without really knowing your chakras, because you can't feel it. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people in society live in a lie. They are telling themselves a story of who they are and what their life is, and that's not actually true, but they're not conscious that it's true. It feels true to them, so they're telling themselves the story that they're kind or nice, and yeah, they're kind and nice maybe like 60-70% of the time, but there's then also the time where you want to knock your block off your parents, or knock your father's head off or something. Knock his block off. I forget that saying. It's a cute saying, knock the block off. You're not going to act it out, but there's a moment of you of rage that comes up. Or when you hear like someone speaking about different politics to you, there's like rage or hatred that comes up. Or if you get in an argument with your partner, there is a rage or hatred that comes up. And that comes up so strongly, more than likely because you're in denial of it. So most of the time you're pushing it down. So when it does come up, it's like a big, huge burst. It's like opening a champagne bottle. It's something like, but a lot of the time people are really unconscious of this, because first of all, you have to be able to feel it in your body. If you're just living in your third eye chakra and in your thoughts and in your stories, you can't feel that when someone at work speaking to you, that like you want to smack them in the face. Not really, but like that you're angry with them. What it feels like maybe is a deadness in your body, and maybe you feel bored, or you feel extremely tired suddenly. And so it's very hard pointing it out when you see it in other people, because often people are really unconscious of it, because they don't want to become conscious of it, because it's too painful for people to see about themselves. Like, what story can you create about yourself? If you've always believed you're a good person, how can you possibly tell yourself that? Imagine if someone's like really into church and really into God. Like, how do they justify these hateful feelings or thoughts? The only way they can do it is really suppress it. But everyone does it, I think. Everyone's walking around in the story of what they want or what they don't want, and their stories are always changing according to what they're involved in. Hello? Oh, good. Suddenly I had a feeling that my audio had stopped. My wire into my audio is damaged, or the audio receiver is damaged. But even when I change wires, it doesn't fix the problem. So it implies that it's in the audio receiver. So for the microphone, so if I move too much, it suddenly stops and I don't notice. And I'm talking away. Boo, 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 boo. So And I think that that people misunderstand what waking up is, that it's something energetical and not personal. So, like for an example, I think something that I would have been surprised about before was that I can still have projections onto people. So I thought that it was like going beyond projections, but it's not the human going beyond projections and judgments. The human has to have projections and judgments. It's part of the machine. But there's something in the machine that lets go. So in that way, you could maybe say the machine, there's something in the machine that's enlightened, but it's not even the machine that lets go, but something happens where there is this shift from being that machine to not being that machine anymore. But my brain can still have projections. So for an example, I can be walking along the street and I can look at someone and there can be a thought like that they have very dark energy or something, and that's a projection. I'm not right. That's a subjective point of view. Like there might be some accuracy in it, but it's also like this body, mind, thoughts and feelings appearing. Or I could be listening to someone speak and there could be the thought coming up that they're arrogant in what they're saying. And maybe another person would think they're arrogant and another person, but maybe the fourth and fifth person would think they were just being confident. So this body still has projections. Or it can have a projection that it thinks that somebody's not treating it very well. And that is a projection, but it doesn't, well, projections are a fascinating thing because they're not truth, but they help us navigate around this world. But it doesn't mean they're true. So if I go to someone and say, I think you're treating me badly, or I think this person treated me badly, or that person treated me badly, or I think this person's not very nice, or whatever I'm talking about, these are all projections. And they're never going to be truth because you can't contain something in a word or in a sentence or in a thought. They're Lisa's particular opinions, and there isn't a truth. Like somebody's behavior isn't a way in which we describe it, but there might be close to it. So if I say, I think you're treating me not very kindly, or you're treating me aggressively, that's the way I feel, and they might not internally feel like that. They might be having drunk lots of coffee or be very excited. I mean, if they're screaming their head off, then it's pretty clear, but it doesn't mean it's fact. And also the other really fascinating thing that's about this subject is it also doesn't mean that they're guilty. Like often what we're playing with in our beings is that they're guilty and I'm innocent. Even if they're screaming, even if they were to stab you or shoot you, you can't see the greater picture of what's happening. And even though we say it's them and they get taken to prison, say, like we don't understand the mechanisms of how that's happened. Like we believe it's them and that they've got a soul and they've got a personal entity inside their body, but that's only what we believe. Like I remember already enjoying this film, The Giver. I'm trying to update the references on my reference page with a lot more films. There's so books. There's so much I've read and books that I've loved, but I forget the name of the books and it takes a lot of time to look it up. But one film that I really enjoyed was called The Giver, and I'm still meaning to read the book of that. I've been sent it on audio file, but it wasn't easy for me to listen to. That was Osborne. Thank you for sending that to me. But the film, The Giver, I just thought it was really cool because in the film, it's really complex what happens. I can imagine the book is so cool and really amazing, its description. But one part that I like about it is that they've got this society that's in the future, and they're denying a lot of the past to society, or they're denying all the past. So I'm sure they tell the people about some form of past, but they don't tell them about what the actual past is. And that means that they can control what society thinks, in a way. And for example, they erased the notion of death. So when people got older to retirement age, they were sent to elsewhere. And basically they were euthanized. But nobody knew that. Even the people that euthanized them didn't know they were killing them. They just injected them, and then they went down a chute to elsewhere, and everyone believed they were in a place that you go to for retirement, and that when they're ready to retire they'll go and find them. And they had no concept of death. Isn't that really something? And I really loved that, like watching that in a film. I thought how brilliant that is. Because, and we think from our side of things, how stupid, how can they not realize that people die? But we're the ones that's stupid, because we invented the idea of death, and we are the ones that dogmatically believe in death. Whereas actually, death doesn't happen. There is shifts in energies. We take death as when the body stops moving or stops breathing, but even scientists can't discover when death actually takes place, because when you look into the cells are still behaving the same, the cells are still alive. But we define it as when the brain stops or when the heart stops, but the body is still alive, just not alive in the way that we think it is. So scientists can't actually find that moment of death in the cells or in the body. And you could never find it, because what happens is that body then transforms into something new. But because we're so convinced that somebody is their behaviors and somebody is their body, that when the body stops moving, we think that's the end of them. We're so conditioned and hypnotized by this thought. Like, I can feel even now people are like, of course that's death, of course that's death, they're dead. So like, say if Khaleesi died, there would be a missing of the form of Khaleesi, but who is Khaleesi to die? There is no Khaleesi in there. She doesn't die, because she was never alive. Who Khaleesi is, and has always been, is life, which is right here. So when you're looking for your loved ones that have died, what you're missing is their behaviors, their body, their interaction. But none of that was ever what was experiencing. That wasn't an entity. That was never experiencing. That was being experienced. Who they actually are is what's looking out of the eyes from that perspective now. This pure presence that's everywhere in everything. So actually they're still here. They never left. Their essence, who you always spoke to, not who replied in the word form, like that's an appearance happening in life, but their essence, who actually heard you, who actually was conscious of you, never changed. That's really miraculous. But their conditions did. Like, so if Khaleesi died, like we say it's Khaleesi's dead and the body is gone, and everyone understands what that means. So her behaviors have gone, that body is gone, that beautiful face has gone, those pointy ears, that hyperactive personality has gone. But she hasn't gone. The essence, that one that looked at me, the one that was conscious of me, the one that was conscious of me speaking, not the one that interpreted it. And when I said sit, the brain was like, oh, sit, stand, walk. Is my microphone still working? Yes. YouTube still working? Yes. Yes. Everything's still working. Yes. Yes. Another thing that you could say about the body is that yeah, no, forget that. It's going to go off on another tangent then. Forget it. So, so a question you might ask is, if I'm not enlightened, which I'm not, then why do I have hierarchy to speak about it? Like, shouldn't I reserve it for people that are enlightened? Or say that they're enlightened, or that, I don't know, whatever. And the truth is it's just happening. I know that sounds like a real cop-out, but just me speaking about it kind of happened, and that's what life wanted, and it doesn't seem to end for the moment. But I don't feel internally that I have more right to talk about it than anybody else. I just am talking about it. There was, in the beginning, this shift happened and everything was so different, and there was like an excitement to share that. And then from that, that people just kept asking, and then this happened and that happened. It led one thing to another. But it just kind of happens, and I don't think about it. It's just what I do. But I don't have any right to talk about it over anyone else. And I feel like what do I feel about people talking about it? I don't feel anything about what people talking about it. I think that it all works perfectly, and you'll go towards the person that you resonate with the most. And I think that's what's important. And when you're finished resonating with that, then you'll move on to another energy. I'm not a fan of gurus. I've always state that. But I also say that if you're attracted to that, then I think that's beautiful. Not because they're a guru, but because that's your path. Just like also, though, if you're attracted to something else, I think that you have to go towards that which resonates in your body. That I feel like the wise way to live life is go towards that which makes you expand. And that's your guru. But a lot of the time people don't know what that means. So Ramesh used to say, in every given moment, do exactly what you feel like doing, knowing there is nobody doing anything. And I feel like in every moment, it's not in every moment you should go towards that which makes you expand. Like if a lion is running towards you, then more than likely it's pain that makes you run away, like fear comes. But in general, it's like it's moving towards that which opens you. And being brave with that. Like I think that's the most mentally healthy way to live. That's what I did before I had my shift, this shift in Bali. Like I'd had many shifts, but this was like this big one. Something really like broke a hole in this being. I was in Bali. I'm sure many of you have heard this many times before. And I had 1 month in Bali. I'd booked 1 month. You get a 1 month visa. I was totally alone and nobody really knew I was there, like my friends or family. And I think I had $5, $4, or maybe even $3,000, I can't remember, Australian dollars. I had a certain amount of money. I paid for my accommodation for a whole month. And I just decided that I was going to do exactly what I felt like doing for the whole month. So if I felt sleepy, I slept. If I felt like eating, I ate. If I felt like walking, I walked. And I tried my best to not follow shoulds or shouldn't, but to follow what the body was instructing me. So not like a mental idea of what I should do. So not fighting the tiredness and be like, oh, you should stay awake because of this or because you're going to sleep later. Just really allowing the body to run the show, and like just walking along, and if I suddenly saw something and I liked it, I just went in and bought it, or I went in and had a massage, or like just everything that I felt to do. Yeah. Because in that, the mental noise of you really begins to disappear. Like in allowing your body to orientate you. I'm not saying that it's the recipe for life, because your mind has to work certain things out, so you might have to force yourself to do things sometimes when you really don't want to do them. But in general, letting the body really inform you of what it wants and it doesn't, and really trusting that. And that's really out of control. The mind is always trying to control and form an idea of who you are and where you should go and what you should do. And it's really out of control to listen to the body. So I'd be in conversation with people and then suddenly I'd stand up and be like, I want to go now, goodbye. And it was okay because I didn't really know anyone, and so it wasn't like I was really letting down friends if I was out for food with people. It was more like I met them in the cafe and was just speaking with them, and just really trusted that wasn't arrogance, or that wasn't hurting them, that my body knew a greater truth of what I had to do. And I still live a lot like that, but not all the time in this society. It requires a certain amount of compromise, not that much. We live in a relatively free society, but a certain amount of compromise. And it is really vulnerable, like doing what you want to do in every moment, because it also challenges your concept of good and bad. Like like if you're in a restaurant, and you suddenly feel like leaving, for example, that could be considered inconsiderate or selfish. And it's really like playing with that to an extent. Like I think that because of the way our society's set up, and because everybody else isn't doing it, like we do have to be considerate to an extent of people's feelings. But playing with this for a period is really beautiful. Like just going with the feeling rather than the intellect, and trusting that life is taking care of itself, and that our ideas of good and bad are just ideas, if you're having dinner with somebody and they decide, so if I was having dinner with someone and they decided they wanted to leave, and they were fine to leave me in the cafe alone to carry on eating my food, like I didn't have to get up and leave, like I would be totally fine with that if someone said, I just had this feeling in my body that I have to leave now. And I would be really okay with that. I mean, it could get more complex if it was like really late at night and you're in a dodgy area and they're driving you. Like as a female, it sometimes gets complex with those types of things, maybe for a male as well. But if they would, like most of the time, even if they explained that, I most probably would be happy to get my food packed up and just go home with them. Like I don't see like there's a line, I suppose, of where people become abusive, but I can really understand that, like their body is telling them that they've got to go home. It's no offense on me. And I don't see eating a meal as happiness, but I understand there is also a line on that as well. Like people can use it cruelly. Like I didn't, when I don't think I have cruel intentions when I'm using it, but I know that people have used it cruelly on me before. Like they've used it as an excuse to hurt me. Like they've said, I'm just doing this because my body wants to do it, and it's quite harsh what they're doing, but really they're doing it to punish you and to get you to say no and to argue with them, like to push you to that line into argument. So it can become complex when you're interacting with other people, but at the end of the day, that's their issue and that's them, and you can deal with that in the moment. But when it comes from you in a genuine place, that you're not trying to hurt someone, you're trying to follow your body as a way of expansiveness, and you're following that expansiveness, you're following love, you're not following meanness where you're doing it to hurt or to upset the other person. You're doing it as a way to expand. So you're not using it as a game. But in all of that, just saying that, it makes me realize that you have to be super aware of the body, because you might not even realize that you're doing something to be mean to someone. Like your story is that you want to do something. So say if you're with your partner and you want to flirt with another woman and in front of your partner, and that's really what your body says it has to do. But deep down what you're doing is you're wanting to hurt your partner, you're wanting to humiliate them or embarrass them. This is just an example. But on the surface you might not be conscious of that. On the surface it might feel like something that you really want to do. So it is complex, like you really have to be aware of your body, and I think that's why over the last 4 or 5 years I've spent so much time teaching chakra work to try and get people really conscious of what their body's saying. So you've got your surface level, like I want this, I want to flirt with these women, and then you've got your deep feelings of what you really want. And I kind of feel your deep feelings of what you really want are always expanded. Yeah, so it gets so complicated because I say that, but sometimes the deep feeling is to move away from something. but it's even that, it's like a pure feeling. It's not done from hatred or ill will. It's complex. I struggle to put all of that into words. Okay, we go to questions.